Michael Evans. Dr. Evans at that time was the chief of the human physiology lab at Tufts University. He had been doing strength training research in the 80s, published this book in 1991, and the title, of course, is Biomarkers, 10 Keys to Prolonging Vitality. So what Dr. Evans essentially did in his book is he identified determinants, which he calls biomarkers, that predict whether or not you're going to live a longer and healthier life. And so some of the things that you might expect to see on that list are there, like body composition, bone mineral density. Those are, of course, important. But two big surprises for 1991, and even two surprises for people today, is the fact that the number one biomarker in this book, the number one predictor of living a healthier, longer life, is muscle mass. Number two is strength. So we're going to drill down on these tonight, but this was in 1991, 28 years ago. We've had a mountain of research since then reinforcing those as important determinants of living longer and living better. So this was in 1991. Now, the second reason why we want to pay attention to our strength and health, even though we're already strength training, is a study that was published in 2014 in the American Journal of Medicine. This was a study that looked at the relationship between muscle mass and mortality rates, and they found an inverse relationship here in adults that were aging. In other words, as muscle mass went up, mortality rates dropped. And so I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and Dr. James Fisher was reviewing this data, and he came up with a soundbite that was very accurate. I just love what he said. He pointed out that it's hard to kill strong people. What a clear, succinct, to the point way to look at this inverse relationship between muscle and mortality. Muscle goes up, mortality goes down. So for these two reasons, I'm going to argue that even if you are strength training right now, it still is very, very beneficial to be focused on your strength as a way of protecting your health as you're aging. Now, having said that, we have 3 action steps tonight. How are we going to make this happen? How are we going to achieve a stronger, healthier body so quickly and efficiently? We have 3 action steps. Those 3 action steps are up on our board here. We're going to talk about supervision and why that is even more important than we've thought in the past. Number 2 is we're going to talk about this thing that you've heard me talk about before, which is muscle failure, and why that is the ideal dose of medicine to make your body stronger. Again, some people may be surprised by that. And lastly, we'll talk about something that almost nobody talks about, which is the central nervous system. It's highly correlated to your muscular system, and it's an important ingredient when we consider how and why can we get stronger from a strength workout. So let's start with number 1. Recommendation number 1 for being stronger and healthier, and in fact, let me put one footnote to that. When I say be stronger, be healthier, it's again to add quality years to your life. We're not talking about saying, let's live 10 years longer, but have those years be substantially worse. Nobody says that. Everybody wants quality years. So we're talking about adding quality years to your life by adopting these practices. So step number 1 is to be supervised when you're strength training. Now this seems almost too obvious. Most of you are already supervised, but there's 2 important insights that scientists have discovered about supervision that we should be aware of even when we're exercising in a supervised strength program like the one here at MedFitness. Number 1 is that it is simply easier to not work out when you're not being supervised. I don't think anyone will argue this. If you are not seeing your trainer and you're not checking in and you're not getting coaching and you're not getting feedback, it's easier to skip workouts. We see this all the time with our clients. If they're traveling or out of town or in a different state for the winter and they're just gone, we see the vast majority have a hard time getting started with and sticking with a strength training program, despite the fact that we're giving them resources and encouraging them and so on and so on, and seeing them when they get back. So point number one about supervision, it is easier to not work out when you're not being supervised. So that's the first thing we should be aware of when we are being supervised, because you're typically compliant. We have incredibly high compliance rates here with weekly workouts at Med Fitness. And so being in that highly supportive environment, you might not be thinking, well, gee, if I tried to work out on my own, I probably wouldn't do it. That's really what we see on a very consistent basis. So supervision matters in terms of weekly consistency with strength workouts. The other one is an almost bigger insight that was revealed last year in a study published in the Journal of Biomed Research International. This was a very interesting study. What these scientists did is they took, again, adults who hadn't been strength training, put them through 6 months of rigorous one-on-one personal training focused on strength workouts, trained them for 6 months, saw improvements in body composition, saw all kinds of functional strength improvements, really got great gains in 6 months, and then gave the group one of two options. They said, group one, we're gonna suggest you keep strength training. Group two, just go do nothing. So they could either keep strength training on their own, unsupervised. This was comparing supervision to not being supervised. So imagine you had a trainer for 6 months, and then you were told, Richard, go train on your own. You said, okay, I know how to do it. I've been with my trainer. I'll go apply that to my own workouts at the gym. This was a shocking result. 6 months after that, which is 1 year later, when they compared the results that the people who were strength training achieved to those who were just doing nothing, you would guess that those who strength trained continued to gain benefits. That's what we would think, and that's what many people would have guessed. In this study, what was surprising is that the people that kept strength training got the same results as people who did absolutely nothing. So you could go home, sit on a couch, do nothing, don't strength train for 6 months, and then have your peers strength training on their own, unsupervised for 6 months. You basically got the same results. This was a huge surprise. But when we drill down on it and look at what these scientists felt about these outcomes, they're consistent with what most of the industry would suggest if you have people who are strength training on their own in an unsupervised environment. What they basically concluded is that when people aren't being coached, supervised, guided the way they are in a structured program like we have here at Med Fitness, they just don't work as hard. And remember, we're going to talk more about this in 2 seconds, but remember, when you think about strength training, the single most important factor determining the benefits you get is how hard you work. So what happens? You're not with your trainer, you're just not pushing yourself to the same threshold that you would if you're just training, or I'm sorry, you're on your own and you're not pushing yourself the way you would with your trainer. So this is a surprise, but it does make sense. And so at the end of the day, for everyone who's being supervised right now, your job is to stay in that supervision system. If you're not getting coaching and supervision, I would strongly recommend that you get into a supervised environment based on the evidence that we have from this study and based on common sense as well in terms of compliance and intensity. So this is recommendation number one, to maximize your strength and health right now, is to be in a supervised program working with a fitness professional for your strength workout. Number two is to train to muscle failure. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. Muscle failure is that point where you are unable to complete a full repetition with the exercise that you're performing. So this means that you would end your set with a partial rep. It might be a third of the range of motion, it might be a half, it might be 2/3 the range of motion, but you're not getting a full repetition. You're fatigued to the level that you're unable to complete that last repetition. The American College of Sports Medicine would call this volitional fatigue. Now, why is this so critical? Well, it's simple. The stimulus to your muscles, in other words, the effort that you put into your exercise, is related to the response that you get in terms of adaptation. So we know that the workout makes us stronger. We know that if we raise the stimulus, if our effort goes up, we push a little harder, we'll get more of a response, more outcomes, more adaptation. So in this scenario, the effort is only measurable at two levels. I can only measure two thresholds of effort. I can measure 0, have you sit on the machine and just observe you do nothing, that's 0 effort. Or I can have you train all the way to where you can't move the movement arm another inch. Again, a partial repetition. From there you set the weight down and you're done. That's what we would call 100% effort. So it only makes sense to train at that threshold of 100% effort, because we know when effort is high, the response goes up. The main response is the strength gain that you're getting. So this is a quick, easy, simple, efficient way to get the greatest stimulus, which leads to the greatest response. Again, these two are completely connected. Your body adapts based on the effort that you put into that exercise. So step number 1 here, straightforward as it seems, is to train to muscle failure on each exercise. I know we've talked a lot about this in the past, and we've reinforced the important point that this is a safe way to train given how we do things here at Med Fitness and the equipment that we have and the excellent biomechanics that we have. But don't be afraid of this. Training at this level of effort may be just a little more uncomfortable, but it's going to provide the greatest stimulus, the greatest response, and the greatest strength gains that you could possibly get from your strength workout. So the goal being to not do a full repetition in that last repetition. Work as hard as you can to where you're unable to do a complete repetition with good form and good speed. So that's step number 2, is to train to muscle failure. Now, number 3 is one that pretty much nobody talks about, which is your central nervous system. So what I'm going to say here is that you want your central nervous system to have enough time so that it recovers from the workout. Now, this is a new concept for most people. We always think about our muscles. We think about the fatigue and some of the micro trauma to the skeletal tissue that happens when we strength train. We're not thinking about our nervous system. Now, the central nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord, and they are 110% responsible for communicating to your muscles. If you didn't have your nervous system, your muscles would just be a useless pile of protein doing nothing. So the ability to contract and generate force comes from the nervous system. And so let's step to the side here for 2 seconds to help you understand this process. If you think about your computer, we know that computers have operating systems. And then the software we purchase operate on that operating system and then do what they're supposed to do. So a good example is a PC. If you have a PC, you're probably operating on Microsoft Windows. That's the operating system that allows all these programs to do what they do. Strip that operating system away, those programs do absolutely nothing, no matter how complicated and how flashy they are. Same thing with your muscular system. Strip out the central nervous system, your muscles do absolutely nothing. All of the communicating to the target muscle comes from the nervous system. Without it, you're doing essentially nothing with your skeletal muscles. So the point being here that a strength workout is very stressful to the central nervous system. And the other thing we want to know is that your nervous system's ability to adapt and improve its efficiency of recovery is very small compared to your muscular system's ability to get stronger. We know our muscles can get a lot stronger. We know they can get larger. A lot of good adaptations occur in the muscular system. But in the nervous system, that capacity is highly limited. It can improve a little bit, but not much. Whatever your recovery rate is going to be that for the rest of your life. So you really can't modify that through exercising. You simply have to respect it and give your body time to recover so that the nervous system can do what it's supposed to do in that next workout. So again, the nervous system is stressed in the workout. It also needs time to rest and adapt before you would go do a strength workout again. Now, how much is enough when we think about recovery of the nervous system? Well, if we just look at the most current guidelines published by the American College of Sports Medicine, they're recommending between 48 and 72 hours of rest between strength workouts. However, there is a growing body of evidence that suggest with high intensity training, the way we train here at Med Fitness, that recovery time is a minimum of 72 hours. So 72 to 96 is likely to be more productive when you're training hard the way we train here at Med Fitness. Again, that training, that recovery window hinges on intensity. So if you are working out on your own, I'm not recommending that, but if you do it, your intensity is likely to be lower, and you will probably recover sooner if you are training on your own. But in a supervised environment, the way we're doing it here, or if you're working with a trainer, you're going to be working harder. So you likely need a longer window of recovery. So in my case, as a good example, I train on Tuesday and Friday. So from Tuesday to Friday, I have 72 hours of rest before I go work out again. And then between Friday to Tuesday, I have 96. So balancing out 96 and 72 here to be reasonably well recovered so that I'm gaining strength. And at my age of 56, having been training since I was probably 9 years old, I'm more or less maintaining my strength. I'm not continuing to get stronger at 56. My goal is to hang on to the strength that I've had for a very long time now. So this is a super critical take-home message. When we look at the ACSM's recommendations, we look at some of the emerging science on recovery of the nervous system, it really tells us that a third strength workout within 7 days is a complete waste of time. What basically happens if you train a third time, you're essentially weaker in that third workout, so you're getting absolutely nothing out of it. Now we can see this with our clients, those who unfortunately make a mistake of getting in a third workout in a week. We don't recommend that, but occasionally that happens. If that happens to you, what you're going to notice is that the weights feel heavier. You're not going to be able to get the full repetitions with the workout skills that we recommend to be safe and effective. So this is good news. It really frees you up to have more time living your life instead of having to think about doing another strength workout. So again, circling back, a third intense full body strength workout when you're supervised, when you're being progressed, is a waste of your time, and it only makes you weaker. So having said that, let's summarize. We've said 3 key things, right? Number 1, continue to be supervised. Most of you are already supervised, so keep being supervised. We now have